Good morning, guys. So this morning we are off to Stoke, to the Bet365 stadium, because we've got Fulham under 23s away to Stoke under 23s. But that's not what today's video is about. I wanted to talk to you about the future of mirrorless photography, and then kind of where I think that fits for me. Because a lot of you guys will know that I recently acquired the R6, and I've been using the R6 alongside the 1DX, and that puts me in a fairly unique position where I kind of am getting a direct comparison every day between Canon mirrorless and Canon DSLR in the 1DX series. And now I suppose I have to kind of decide, where do I go next? And it's fairly good timing because there are now lots of rumoured specs about the potential new Canon R1. That camera looks absolutely insane, but there's a lot of talk that the specs are just that they're rumoured. They're not the actual specs we're going to see. We're still going to talk about them anyway, but before we do, let's get on the road and then we will talk to you when we are out and about and going. Let's get moving. I'm out in the colours. Time to stop and stretch off the legs for a couple of minutes. So, the Canon R1. Now, there are some rumoured specs out there now, and a lot of people seem to be suggesting that these are maybe fabricated or very much rumoured specs. But nonetheless, let's talk about a couple of them anyway. Because the rumours supposedly are that the Canon R1 will have an 85 megapixel sensor. 85 megapixels. Can you imagine the size of those files? There's also a suggestion that it will be able to shoot 20 frames per second, and that also if you're shooting in a mode 21 megapixel sensor, you will be able to shoot at 40 frames per second. There's various other specs about it as well. It sounds like the autofocus system will be next level, and something which jumped out at me, the rumoured ISO levels goes up to 1.6 million. 1.6 million ISO. Can you imagine? You might as well forget the stadium floodlights. You'll be fine without them. And that is insane. But nonetheless, at the same time, there is also a rumoured price point, which is rumoured to be $8,500. So you are talking a huge amount of money for that camera. Now, regardless of whether or not we believe the specs being as accurate as those rumours, what I would say is I certainly anticipate the Canon R1 to be an absolute next level mirrorless camera. I imagine it probably will be the best of the best. It's going to be right up there, and it will be a real beast for sports. I imagine it will be insane. I'm sure a lot of sports photographers, action photographers will look at that camera seriously. I genuinely believe it probably will be one of the best cameras ever released. And of course, as we said, that does also mean it's probably going to have one of the highest price tags ever released with a camera at the same time. Now, let's just get it out of the way right now. That is not a camera that is going to be in my price range. Certainly not a camera that I will be looking to get anytime soon after it is released. Of course, however, there are still loads of mirrorless cameras that are holding their own really, really well when it comes to sports. As you guys know, I'm shooting with the Canon R6, which for all intents and purposes pretty much competes with the Canon 1DX Mark III. Of course, there's also the Canon R5, which has pretty much everything that the R6 has, although maybe slightly less lower light performance, but we're talking marginal there. And of course, it has a much bigger sensor. Again, though, that comes with a huge price tag, which unfortunately for me right now means it's probably not the most realistic option unless the prices come down on used models in the future. So it kind of leaves me in a position where I'm thinking, well, what do I do next? Do I upgrade my Canon 1DX so I get maybe a 1DX Mark II or even a Mark III? Or do I stick with the fact I'm enjoying mirrorless, I'm using my Canon R6, maybe I get a second Canon R6 and I carry on, fully commit to mirrorless at this stage? Anyway, there's a lot more to talk about there, but we've got to get going. We've got to get moving to Stoke, so I will catch up with you guys when we get there. See you in a bit. Welcome guys to the Bet365 Stadium in Stoke, home of Stoke City. I'm just up here setting up My remote camera, just getting that ready to go. Should be all good. So, the Canon R6 versus the 1DX. Now, this debate could be had forever, right? But for me, the biggest thing that I am enjoying about the Canon R6 is just the fact that it's smaller. I love working with the smaller body. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes that causes problems. For basketball, I would very much like it to have the grip, and in fact, I will be buying the grip as soon as I can. But even then, it still will be so much smaller than my 1DX. And I'm really enjoying that. But that's just I suppose, a cosmetic thing and an ergonomic thing, right? In terms of performance, it is so good. The autofocus is amazing, and I really do find myself now leaning towards the R6 when I've got a choice of which camera body to reach for. Now, I should say, and I should remind everybody, that I'm of course shooting with the Canon 1DX Mark I. If I was to upgrade that to the Mark II, everybody suggests that is a huge upgrade, and they suggest that the upgrade to the Mark III is great, but maybe not as good as the difference between the Mark I and the Mark II. So if I was to move up to the Mark II, then I strongly suspect that the autofocus and everything between the two cameras would actually be very similar. In terms of actual image quality, I find the R6 to be fantastic, but you know what? I also really like the images that I get from the 1DX, so that is probably slightly more 50-50 for me. ISO performance with the R6 maybe slightly better. I really do trust the R6 in auto ISO when I need to, and even when I find that I've shot images up to about 10,000 ISO, they're absolutely fine. The other thing to consider, of course, is that you do need the adapter when you're using your EF lenses on the Canon R6. Now, maybe initially I was concerned about that, but actually I'm not anymore. The performance of EF lenses using the adapter is totally fine. Check out the separate video that I've made all about that. I'll link that here in case you want to pause and go watch that one, then come back. And of course, the other big thing that I need to think about is that so much of what I use my camera for now is video. And actually, the video for the R6 is really good for me. Fine, it doesn't have the 8K like the R5, but I don't need that. The 4K is really great. The 1080p, like I'm shooting in right now, is really good. And the biggest thing about this camera is it's small. I'm holding it out in my hand right now, and I've got the flip-out screen. I can see myself right there, which I would not be able to do if I was filming my videos on the 1DX. So, sports photography aside for a second, the video thing is a big point for me. In terms of the sensor size, we're shooting at roughly 20 megapixel sensor, which is great for sports, more than enough. I really do think that, and actually it's more than enough for most things. That said, something like a larger megapixel sensor, like rumour has it you're going to get with the R1, is great then if you're shooting other things. I don't just shoot sports, I shoot landscapes, I shoot events, things like that, when actually a larger sensor could be beneficial in that sense. But if I was to be looking at a 1DX Mark III or Mark II, actually the sensor size is very similar to the R6. And again, I know people are going to be saying, well, in that case, why not go for the R5 for compromise? Again, it just comes down to price. Okay, anyway, that's enough banging on because I need to finish setting up this remote camera. So that just leads us on, really, to what am I going to do? And I think for that, we should head home. For me, that's going to be in about 4 hours from now, 5 hours even maybe. For you guys, it'll be in about 3 seconds. So I will see you guys when we get home. And just like that, like I said, 3 seconds later for you guys, we are back here in the office. Had a good afternoon up in Stoke, gotta say, it was decent up there. Nice venue. Actually, the first time I've been to the Bet365 stadiums. That was cool to do. Don't worry, for those of you guys who are here for the football photos, I'm going to put some of them at the end of the video, so don't worry, you'll be able to have a chance to see the photos. So what am I going to do? Well, look, the Canon R1, as I said earlier, does look like it will be an incredible camera. I really think it's going to be probably the best flagship pro body that Canon have ever released. I think it will have some crazy capabilities. I think it will be a fantastic camera for sports. And the problem is, I also think it will have a staggering price tag. And so, like I've already alluded to, that is not going to be the camera for me at the moment, unfortunately. me. Now, I do love the Pro bodies, I love the 1DX series, but the more I shoot with the R6 and the more I use my Canon 1DX alongside my R6, combined with the focus that I think Canon will now have on their RF lens range and probably carrying on producing their mirrorless camera bodies, I think mirrorless has got to be the future. And it kind of feels like I'm at a stage where actually I've gone into it a bit. You know, I dabbled with the EOS R, then I bought the R6. I might as well stick with it and go the whole way. So that means I have decided that I will be buying a second R6 and I will sell my 1DX. Now that wasn't an easy decision. I really did kind of think actually maybe for now it's cool to have a bit of best of both worlds, you know, shoot with the R6 and maybe get myself a 1DX Mark II to go alongside it. But for me, I think I would like to have two camera bodies the same. It is quite confusing going back and forth from an electronic viewfinder to a regular viewfinder. It does throw you off in terms of exposure and what you're looking at, and also just the muscle memory of having two camera bodies the same is something which I would really like to get back to. I will have to get the battery grips for both of them, which isn't cheap. Those battery grips are crazy prices right now. But I do think that is the right thing to do for me. Now, I should say, this isn't going to be an immediate jump. I certainly don't intend on ordering it this week. It will probably be at some point in the future. I suppose what I'm saying is I think that will be my next step. For now, I will carry on shooting my 1DX alongside the R6, not in any rush to change it, but that is going to be the way that I will go. I know some of you guys are interested and I get a few messages coming to me through my various social media channels. Perfect opportunity to jump in and talk about my social media channels. You want to find me on Instagram, see some more of my sports photos, @RobSamblesSport is the best place to go. If you just want to follow me and find out a little bit more about me, @RobSambles is a good place to go. And on Twitter, you can find me @RobSamblesPhoto. I throw some behind the scenes and stuff like that on over there. Go check those out definitely. So I've had a lot of questions, people asking me kind of what I think of the R6 now that I've used it for a few months. So there is going to be a whole separate video all about my use of the EOS R6 over a period of, how long have I had it now? Probably, I think I've actually had it for nearly 4, 5, maybe even 6 months. And so the video is going to be all about that coming up real soon. Make sure you stick around, subscribe if you haven't already, because that video is coming up soon where I'm going to talk fully about my experience of the R6, using it to shoot professional sports over a period of time. As well as subscribing, make sure you do me a favour, hit that like button on the video. I don't know how you guys found these slightly more kind of vlog type video when I was out and about doing stuff, as well as just talking about the subject. I want to try and throw those in every now and again because you don't just want to see me sat in this office the entire time. Good to get out and about and do something a little bit different. But either way, do me a favour, hit that like button because it helps me out loads. YouTube seems to be putting a lot of weight behind that like button now, and certainly the more videos that I see that get likes earlier on after I put them out on my channel, the more that video then tends to be successful. So I think that's kind of how YouTube's algorithm works. Really appreciate you guys helping me out. It's the thing you can do to say thank you for making a video. In the meantime, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you on the next video.